This is crazy.
Yeah.
This is
Well-
nuts that these five guys, after 40 plus years, would all be sitting here together, right?
Yeah, we're still here.
And we're all still here. We're all still here, so.
I'm not here. The Doors never had a bass player.
Oh,
So my first question is to Bob Welch.
Yes, sir.
Bubba!
Bob, tell us what it was like going into clubs, venues, stadiums, and you're seeing the posted bills for all these other bands, people that have influenced you your entire career, and all of a sudden you're playing those clubs. Can you tell us what that was like, and did you meet any of those celebrities or influences along the way?
Well, we met a few, and like my thought, when we'd be in these smaller clubs and I would see these pictures of these musicians that are going to be there like the week after us, I used to think to myself, are we doing as good as they are, or are they doing this bad?
Quebec, Sly and the Family Stone played the night after we played.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Like Sly.
That was one of
people
Sly's-
like Greg Allman, Johnny Winter. We were all on that same circuit.
We played with Sly and the Family Stone down south around Georgia, Mississippi, somewhere around there. And Sly got high and coke and couldn't make it. And Stone, the whole family Stone was there. And we played, and they couldn't play because he wasn't there. But we were supposed to play together that night in like around 1983. Somewhere either Georgia or I think it was Georgia.
You'd play one night, and the next night Eric Burton would be
Oh.
playing in.
We spent the afternoon with Eric Burden.
Yeah.
That's one of my heroes. He was just still one of my all-time favorites, Eric Burden. To spend an afternoon with him, I'll never forget it. Never forget it.
That's cool.
That was magical. Jim had the whole band take the day off, and like everybody's like, what we got a gig, and I'm looking at Jim. Oh yeah, that's Jim. That's Jim. Take the day off.
Eric Burden and the Animals. They played the same club as us the day after we played it, and we had to go and see Eric and spend the afternoon with him. He asked me what we do. I said, we're doing the Doors. So he said, Doors? He said, the Doors. You know,
Yeah.
right away he knew. He heard about us, but there's something new. He never heard about a band doing the Doors music that wasn't the Doors.
High Point. You played the Elma Combo in Toronto, and that was the high point of the Stones doing a live album at the Elma Combo, and you go,
Yeah, and Rush came to see us.
yeah.
Front row, Rush. That was also '83. So we were backstage before we went on, and some club owner or somebody came back and said, Rush is out here to see you guys in the front row. So
You go to the West Coast,
It was
and you
actually
end up
82 because I was.
you
in
end
the
up
band.
playing the
82, yeah.
Stone in San Francisco, and the Dead and everybody else play there, and you go, you know what? I think we're in the ballpark here.
Is that the point when you realize you've made it?
I don't know.
Is there a point of success? Is there a point when you're out there traveling,
I think
doing what you love?
we
where
ever
you
make
say,
it, Bob?
"Ah,
I think
I've made it."
we
The
knew.
pinnacle of success was measured by a 3-week stay in the Nob Hill Hotel, which included black and white television.
Yeah.
For the very first night we played out, the very first night, January 24th, 1981, was the warm-up in Hazleton, our very first job. Sold out, they were turning people away, and that's when I knew my idea was right, and we all felt very confident that we had the right idea.
So we tell you the story about
Actually,
that.
I
It's a
believe
very
Cooks was our first gig.
No, more than
No,
that.
okay, sorry.
That was our second.
So we end up in this club in Hazleton that would have about a capacity about 250. And there are over 350 people in the club. And we have not played, we've practiced for 10 months. We've not played a single note. And we walk on the stage and we get a standing ovation before we ever play a single note as a band. And we played our first set, and this crowd just exploded to the point where it was almost like, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? But these people enjoyed it so much, and this band was into it. I mean, we were in our our infancy. We're not at the top of our powers as a band. You know, Bob and I, Zibney and I were talking earlier, and he said at one point in time, you know, we had this arc where what we were doing and the quality and the whatever we were able to put on stage was rising. And as that, every night we played, we got better. And every night we kind of tweaked it a little bit and knew what was going on. But it was never the same any two nights,
To
right?
summarize, the hunger to perform overcame the stage fright. None of us felt stage fright. We felt a sense of release.
It's true. I think the fact that everyone had played in different groups and loved music. So the first time I ever seen Robert Zibney, as we call him, Zib Productions, he was in a band with a horn section, and they were doing funk music, City Brass. And I was like a teenager, 13 or 14, and I looked up there, and he was like a Greek god. He was like big, tall guy. I mean, he looked better than a Kiss member. He didn't need the makeup. His hair was long, flowing down his shoulders, and he's playing this Fender bass. He had this rig that if you touched it, you get electrocuted to death. And he's playing this bass, and I just thought, wow, I'll never be in the realm of a guy like that. Look, he's a rock star, you know. And there's Zibney, and he's like pulling strings and banging them. And even my brother Tom, who, God rest his soul, he passed away last year. But Tom loved Zibney, and he said, no, that is Zibney's job. That's what I'm not going to play like that. That's Zibney can play like that. So we'd always designate Zibney to play. Man, I mean, he had a lot of soul in him. He has African American heritage in his genes. We just need to do the research, but it's there.
Well,
The
soul
real-
came from playing with Greg Palmer
Oh.
and Salt and Pepper, who's a local celebrity. But the word you're looking for is bar star. I have enough humility I arrived at being a bar star.
There you go.
The thing was with the theater that was involved, and Jim being so far out there and so into what he was trying to convey to people, he gave the rest of us the permission to just go off. I mean, and we all share stories about, there were different nights when everybody kind of went off the script or whatever, and they were really the things that kept us going, because if you do the same thing over and over and over and over, and you're trying to be true to the music, but then you have those special things. So I just told the story earlier. We were playing in a club one night, high stage, and the lights are right there, and it came to a point in Light My Fire where there's a big keyboard rip, and as I ripped that keyboard and I'm standing on the edge of the stage, these bright red lights came on, and I managed to go right off the stage and fall onto a six-top table and roll off and kind of, as in being dazed, run around and go back up the stairs and finish the solo to Light My Fire. And then, da, 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 you know, you end to Light My Fire, and everybody goes crazy, and we go off stage, and I go back, and the only empathy I got from these guys was, that was great, keep it in the show. You know, so there were all these different things, all these different people that we met.
Mark, you weren't the only one to fall off a stage though during.
I was the only one to fall off the stage, true.
True. Yeah, you were the only one.
I was the only one. And they loved it.
I thought you earlier said that there was a story where he had also taken a header off the stage at one point.
Who?
Yeah, Barrymore's in Ottawa, Quebec.
Right, it was a reconverted movie theater.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Somebody reminded me about 10 years ago. Somebody wrote an email to me. And I remember that after I got the email that we were on stage and I got tangled up in a microphone cord, fell off the stage, and the speakers came crashing down on me. That was a high stage, too. But I came off, I just jumped back up there and it was okay. But that was the whole place stopped. You know,
Yeah.
The Canadians were a great receptive crowd to what we had to do.
They loved us before free trade. They got a little weird during that period. But the Canadians loved us. They really did.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, you're partly responsible for the Canadian Connection, correct?
Yeah.
Your meeting of, is it Cyndi Lauper?
Right, it goes
Can you
back.
Tell us about that.
Surely, it goes back to 1980. I went to see a band called XTC, who Mark and I were talking about them.
Love
They're a
XTC.
band from Swindon, England. They're very big over in England. They had one big hit here. Tragically, it's a bit of a blasphemous song. It's called Dear God. But anyway, XTC was playing at the Ritz in New York City. Cyndi Lauper had a band on Polydor Records called Blue Angel.
Blue Angel.
And they were doing a 50s doo-wop band. She had a pink chiffon dress on, and she was swinging that back and forth, and she looked like a little 50s girl with this blonde hairdo. And I thought, wow, they're never going to make it doing this 50s thing. It's cool, but they ain't going to make it. That's what I'm thinking in my cigar-smoking Alan Klein brain. So I'm looking, and anyway, at the end of the show, the whole band splits, and she's alone on the dance floor, and she has no ride home. So we were looking at each other, and we said, Cyndi, hey, do you want a ride? And she goes, yeah, sure. Could you give me a ride? Because, like, the whole band left me here. And we're like, she's this little girl. She's like 5 feet. We're like, yeah, sure. So we had a big Dodge Caravan, and we put her in the back. The door was up, and we hit the wheel, and off we go. And we're hitting these big potholes in Manhattan, holding on, because you fall out, you hit the road. So Tom's up there driving, and I'm driving with Cyndi Lauper. We're going back to her apartment, and she lived right across the street from the Chelsea Hotel. Or I don't know if it was her apartment, it was one of her band members' apartments. And so on our way, that night we ended up having a big jam session. We were doing Be My Baby by the Ronettes and all these songs. And we had our singer with us, Teresa Ligi, who, she had quite a set of vocals. And at one point, their sax player, he bent over and he said, your singer blows Cyndi out of the water. And I just looked at him. I thought, whoa, I think he's thinking about going south to Alabama with our singer, I'm just thinking, oh my God, But anyway, the point is that on the way there to that apartment, I said, Cyndi, do you have any good connections if I'm ever doing like original music? This is 1980. And she said, yeah, sure. My manager, Ted Rosenblatt, he used to be my manager, Ted Rosenblatt. He's a lawyer and he'll help you out. And she wrote it down. And Cyndi had a ledger this long and that wide, this thick of all classical opera. So this woman, when you hear her later, girls just want to have fun. I mean, this woman really could sing. And I remember thinking, why would you be carrying around this ledger of opera with you? Well, I learned out a few years later. But I looked at it and I thought, wow, talk about studious. So she gave me that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But it was a great night. There we were up there singing all these songs from the 50s. And little did I know in 4 years that Cyndi Lauper would be like, a name that we all know. So anyway, back to the back doors. We were performing in our local fish pond, our little goldfish bowl. And the thing was that I start getting upset because, I was the artist. Bob was like, he was our Michelin tire. He was our Big Mac truck. Bob was cool. He was like Aristotle. He was like the sand. Try and observe, let the sand fall and observe everybody and make a decision about what our choices were. And Mark he tried to take the businessman's perspective. He was like the Gregory Peck of the band, trying to just pull it together, hold it together. Jim and I, we were like, we both thought we came out of poetry school. All Jim and I cared about was the art, the poetry, the acting. All our minds were on was the show. And Jim he's becoming interested in the business aspects. But these guys, they were like kind of running the train engine. And Jim, the more upset he would get, it would affect the music and everything. He started to learn about his voice. Like he can't, drink do up Chivas or whiskey because something was like, well, I guess I should have had those drinks last night.
Yeah. So Jim, the first couple of gigs that we did, thought, like many suffering artists, you have to live the part. And so Jim had a bottle of Chivas or whatever on stage.
That was Ziv, but Jim was probably drinking some kind of whiskey.
Yeah, and so I think after a couple of weeks, it was like, no, this is not going to work over the long term. And so we told him, iced tea in that bottle would work just as well for the crowd as everything else would.
I'll use the real thing.
No, he did.
Yeah, for a while. But Jim was very, very fit, as was Ziv. Ziv was the runner, and Jim was the lifter, and so these guys were very physically fit, and it helped them. It was demanding to be on the road, right?
It was the 3 weeks in Toronto, 21 consecutive dates,
Yes.
all over the city. We repeated 3 times at one club. Matured us and sobered us up and realized that we got to play a lot of gigs now, because when we go back to the United States, we got our DC connection agent who's already booking us in colleges, and we thought to ourselves, we got to sober up and we got to take a professional stance. But up until that, it was kind of like we wanted to be a bar band, and then we became a venue band where we were booked in different venues for the big money.
Yeah.
So I think the largest crowd we ever played to was maybe 8 or 10,000 people. We played in Georgia one night.
Now, there's
And-
an interesting story about this. Bob was telling me earlier about Georgia and someone who had opened for you before they were quite famous.
The other,
Steve Merritt.
The American.
also, Jeff Foxworthy did some dates with us. Charlottesville, Sanford, Virginia, and I think Fayetteville. So he was popular around the Virginia, North Carolina area way before the what's the Hillbilly tour,
Yeah,
whatever,
The Redneck
the
Comedy.
Redneck Comedy Tour. Yeah, this is going back to the '80s. So the Redneck Comedy Tour started up in the '90s after that. But he was our warm-up act. They sent out a comedian. It was cost effective, and he insisted upon warming up our shows because of the contrast, because he knew that we were drawing audiences. So that gave him, created a venue with the college venue, and made him some money as well.
That's a great point when Bob talked about.
So you mean we were the reason for Foxworthy's success?
It
right?
could be. It could
No,
be.
it could be.
We should be getting some
Yeah,
residuals.
Yeah,
We hope
it's as good an
develop,
excuse as
Yeah,
any.
there you
Put 'em in
go.
front of
Well, you know,
big
I mean,
crowds.
it's funny because comedy, music, acting, everything, it always entwines. But I remember when we were in the Nob Hill Hotel up there in Scarborough, Ontario, that, we'd do our performance, and at that time in the early days, we played to a handful of people. Our first fans, Debbie Gordon, Vicki Burgess, handful of people. We had this small clique of people that loved us the way people are cheering today for Johnny Depp. But I'm, praying for peace for both sides. But anyway, my point is that, here's Jim, here we are, we're there, and we're in this cavernous place, bigger, huge, giant room you could see for miles. And it's like the beginning, and I'm thinking, it really tames you to see a huge venue, just a big room, that there's like, pillars of pool tables, and you're thinking, wow, so now you know what real rock and roll is all about. We can't even get past the first pool table with an audience. So you're thinking, oh my God, like, okay. So, and then we would go to bed, 3 or 4 in the morning, and about 2 hours later, all the Canadian stripper girls would hit the stage, and they'd start 5 or 6 in the morning. And you're like, whoa. And like the Canadian guys, they're all driving 18-wheelers, some of them were serial killers. But anyway, my point is that they'd each have like a metal thing filled with ice and beer, and they'd pop off 5 to make sure you don't try to slip it in the pocket, jump in the truck. And each beer back then was 5-6%. We didn't even know what the hell that meant, 5 or 6%. And these Canadian lager guys would be sitting there popping, drinking their beers, and the strippers would be dancing. We'd be up in our hotel room, and we'd hear, "Back in black, and like I'd be taking the pillow, and it's like there's no way I can escape it. So we're getting AC/DC, everything. I look over at Jim, and the iguana would be whacking him with his tail. I'm like, oh God, I guess if I go to hell, iguanas will be beating up Jim, and I'll be hearing AC/DC.
So the Canadian culture shock
Yes.
for us
Oh my God. Yes.
was very interesting.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we
the
go,
Canadians, yeah,
we
of
show
course.
up, we show up at the Nob Hill Hotel, which was our ground zero.
It's right outside
which
Toronto.
Which is in Scarborough, not in Scarborough, but
It was Scarborough. It
yeah,
wasn't Scarborough.
It wasn't Scarborough.
It's right
no
outside
longer,
Toronto.
but it was our home base.
Right.
And
Rush
we
played there. All these famous groups.
we would play in this club, and so we go there and we show up. We're international for the first time. We play this big crowd, and I come off the stage, and somebody hands me a beer, and I go to twist the thing off, and I just tear up my hand because I don't know that there are no twist tops in Canada. Everybody in Canada teaches us how to put a beer on the edge of the counter and slap if you didn't have a bottle opener. The other thing we found out about Canadian beer was it was 7 and 8%. alcohol.
Right.
And so that wasn't normal for us. But
Yeah, their Budweiser was a different experience than ours.
you're in a situation where you have all this Canadian money in it, and it looks
Like Monopoly money. Looked like
let me
Monopoly.
tell you the Monopoly money story. So we were always trying, Chris has already mentioned, we had a group of people who would follow us around. They would go to every club we were at. We became friends with these people, and they were very supportive of us. And a gentleman was talking to me one night, and I was always afraid of being the, quote, ugly American. I knew enough about that. And so I said to him one night, who's on your $5 bill? I had a bill. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, who's on your 10? And he goes, I don't know. I said, who's on your 20? He said, I don't know. I said, how can you not know who's on your money? He said, look. He said, all I can tell you is I know Abraham Lincoln's on your $5 bill. He said, I can tell you that you own all our industry in Canada. 80% of people in Canada live within 20 miles of the US border, and when you sneeze, we wipe our nose. And I went, oh, and here I am, I'm this ugly American that I don't want to be, right? I said, I'm so sorry. I said, but, I just, all these different colors, and I don't understand. This money kind of looks like, quote, Monopoly money. And he said, well, at least it doesn't look like military money like yours does. And at that moment in time, I knew I would never go to another place outside the United States where I didn't know how to say thank you and hello in the native language. So talk about a lesson about going somewhere and being the ugly American without realizing it. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good time to transition. You've spoken a lot about
Let's put this
your
down.
experiences in Canada.
Right.
And
I just want to mention, I'm sorry, I just have to mention that when we played the Nob Hill Hotel, we played to, I think, about 6 or 8 people. And within the period of 12 months, once Jim and all of us were in all these clubs, it was like the fruition of the full circle.
It got out of hand.
We came there in the
Yeah.
winter time. The snow, honest to God, was 3, 4, 5 feet high. It was the dead of winter. It was, I think, below 0, maybe 5 degrees. And there was a line of people out the door. And there was a guy who was a biker, Jim. You remember the guy with the gray hair? He was a biker, and we knew him. I can't think of his name now.
Buddy.
Buddy. And Buddy said, man, guys, you did it. And it was sold out. So the room, I talked about, with all the pool tables, we thought, wow, we'll never get the table number 2. It was sold out. And now I'm like, man, we were in this room with 3 to 4 people, and those same fans were still there. So
You
that's
remember
the truth of the Nob Hill Hotel.
We used to have to bring the batteries from the cars in and leave them with a label in the hotel because it was so damn cold outside.
The
And
only
these people were there.
annoying factor of staying there was that the peelers started work at 11 a.m. on the dot. So they bring
Peeler.
the strippers in at 11.
Great.
And they start stripping for all the day personnel right up until 7 o'clock. And then the band gets on at 9 and plays till midnight. So we had to deal with non-stop,
That's right.
non-stop stripper music for almost 8 hours.
So you show up at the hotel.
That's right.
You would show up at the hotel,
Paper-thin walls.
and it normally took us an hour and a
Black
half
and
to
white TVs.
9.5 or an hour and a half to load in and set up the thing, and it would take 3.5 hours in the afternoon. And our roadies were not complaining. They were not complaining because they'd sit there.
Rooms at a cost of $10 a night Canadian, which at that time was $1 Canadian to 75 cents American exchange rate. Now it's like $1.10 American to $1 Canadian. Everything is backwards now, financially. $10 a night Canadian.
So sorry, we had to get that last word in, but they were doing construction at the Nob Hill Hotel, and they ripped the wall down, and I walked up, and there was all these Rush posters. Those posters today would be worth probably $20,000 each. And I looked, and I seen the word Rush, and I thought, oh my God, Rush, the Canadian, master rocket scientists, musicians, 3-piece, played here.
So the agent, named Mark Wright, his approach was, if Rush can book the room and fill it, The back doors can too. So he booked us in there. Nobody knew about us in Scarborough. And by the end of the week, we had the place packed. We were put up. He put us up against Russia's notoriety and popularity in Canada. We thought he was joking about it. He guaranteed we would pack the room at the end of the week, and we did.
Who was the most memorable person you met while we were on the road?
Quite a few.
Eric Bird was one of them.
Yeah,
Eric
but
Burden, Harold
no,
Smith.
no, not famous. Somebody you remember, somebody who made an impression on you. We had a lot of people that followed the band around. I mean, they were legendary. But is there somebody you remember you met on the road that you remember a name that you said, "Geez, it was interesting that you were in
Hard
that."
to say. There was just different agents, different club owners. Some pretty impressive ones. Nobody could think of right offhand. There's quite a few.
Yeah, it was really
There was some
eclectic.
comical people, like remember Creature?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We had a guy that decided he wanted to be a hanger-on for the band, and he just sort of was there. And we was at the motorhome. We
Yeah.
had a motorhome, and he traveled with us in this motorhome.
He was like a walking, talking rock and roll encyclopedia. He knew every detail about any band.
Well, when we first met him, it was where we parked behind Brassey's Club in Cocoa Beach. And he came up to us dressed in his army fatigues and his boots, and he took us to the beach. And we're all in the water, and he's out there swimming around in his clothes. When we come out, we're laying on the beach, and he just lays in the sand, and he's completely covered with sand. And then he goes to the club with us, covered in sand. And he toured around Florida with us. And then we were leaving Florida, we were going towards Gainesville, and he was in the motorhome with us. And now we're on this little back road towards nothing but swamp on each side.
I think it was Route
No
40.
life in sight for miles. And we're saying to him,
Alligator Alley, yeah.
well, we're on our way to Georgia now, we can't take you, so where can we drop you off? And he's looking out the window and he says, this is
Right here's
And
okay.
he just gets out of the motorhome in the middle of nowhere.
Pouring down rain, too. Big
And I
thunderstorm.
remember as we're driving up the road, I'm looking out this little back window and I can see him just standing on the side of the road.
So it's not all fun and games.
Well, as a parting question, gentlemen, can each of you tell us how the back doors changed your lives?
Sir,
I just did what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a change in music and my life and have an impact that I expected. It went longer than I expected. That's the only difference. I thought it would go maybe 3 years, 4 years. It went 22 and a half years. But that's the change I wanted, and I got it.
Bob?
It was like you achieved success, you know, for that brief moment in your life. What you were striving for to reach in the music business, we reached it. And that was a great feeling.
The motive's still alive today with all musicians in northeastern Pennsylvania. Get a band together, develop a product, get it stage worthy, and get the hell out of Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. Get on the road. You know, just go see something different. And that version of different for us was two countries, most of the northern part of North America, which was worth the experience and the sacrifice, because we had to leave everybody back at home. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to leave town and still have your family and friends there when you get back.
Yep.
Chris?
Well, Mark, maybe you could go next.
No, you go. I want to wrap.
All right, buddy. That's right, because it's always about Mark, because Mark is finally going to his new homestead, which has been his homestead for a while.
Yep.
I was hoping to get away with being last because it's just so heavy, because the back doors, you know, I mean, when I think about originally playing in a club that's capacity, just like up at that hotel in Scarborough, Ontario, the Nob Hill, Cook's Aladdin Lounge was such a huge place, a huge big room. And going in there back in the late 70s and right then and there already knowing that you had to write your own music. Jim is a mentor from childhood Jim always tells, yeah, he calls me alligator. He goes, yeah, alligator. I knew you so long, I held you up when you were 4 and you pissed on me, you know? So we go way back, you know? I mean, so, and I used to think Jim made that story up, but now I realize it's a true story. I figured out the math, you know? So anyway, but you know, Jim had always been in my life, and he was always there at the right time. My first Spanish guitar, a guy, you know, he stole Jim's guitar, and, you know, for a bottle of Steakmeyer. And my brother bought the guitar sat in the corner, I picked it up, I learned an E chord. And when I learned that chord, you know, the sky opened up, and years later I said, yeah, Jim, you know, Tamblyn stole this guitar and he brought it there, and he got his bottle of Steakmeyer, and Jim said, yeah, that was my guitar, he stole that from me. And I'm like, wow, Kismet, the full circle has come to fruition. And Jim Hakim, I thought, man, what is it with me and Jim Hakim? Born August like 23rd, 1949. I'm August the 24th, 1959. This guy, my first guitar, there I am, you know, playing nothing.
Play us a little riff on
Yeah, well, there I am with that guitar, and I couldn't play anything on that guitar. But Jim, in his weird way, you know, put that guitar, and I remember I could only play. That's called Sandy Yellow House. But before that, my friend across the street in 65 taught me. And then he taught me. And then years later, I didn't know the turnaround. Just like the Beatles, Paul McCartney said they had to cross town to learn the other chord, which is B7. They all got on the bus, drove across town to learn the turnaround chord. But anyway, so there's Jim. And you know, Jim, what we forget in the band, not that I'm shining up Jim's shoes here, but they're pretty polished. But my point is that Jim, you know, he was like a 50s guy. He was like, you know, a speed racer. He was, and I would give him my guitar, and he'd like turn his back to me, and I'd say, show me Anya Bird could sing by the Beatles. And he'd go, he wouldn't let me see his hands, and he'd play both guitar parts, and then he'd play like Peter Gunn, you name it, Jim could play it. Dwayne
Jim was a good
all
guitar
the
player.
Adventures, and he'd play
give
like
you that.
Speedy Gonzales. We used to give Jim the guitar at the end of the show, and he would play
played
the national anthem
by
like
Jimi Hendrix.
at Woodstock. And Jim, I thought, boy, you know, it's a pretty hard thing, like to give somebody a guitar when they're doing Morrison all night. You know, at Stars in Brampton, Ontario, Jim would do it, and he'd sound like Hendrix. And I would get too hung up on it because I didn't want to scare him, because you're afraid that suddenly, you know, he'd go into shock, but he'd do it all the time, and it would just crack me up. But Jim could get in that place. But Jim would tell me, the alligator, you got to put more tone on that. You got to just play it a little heavy. And like I would listen and discipline, and I knew that he knew. So he knew about power, and that's something he always pushed. And Bob, and the two Bobs. It's always great having a Bob for the rhythm section, because you get pissed off and you say, I want to hear that backwards. It's always Bob either way, so you can't get mad at them. So anyway, my point is that the Bobs would always have that power, and then Mark with his classical training. So it was a magical and the other thing is that these guys, even now, when we're together, we're you know, we had our fights, you know, like men and women and men, but we always got along, right? You know, now it's like, it was a magical thing that we're this strange combination, and this guy just slowly put it together, and it slowly came together, and it became a great combination of people. Yeah, we had a lot of moments where, you know, we get heated and stuff, but when one guy was weak, well, the four guys were losing it, they weren't right, one guy would take over, and then we'd all lock in together. It was like a beautiful, when you see all the fish in the sea, or when the birds of the air, when they all lock in and they all go together, that's the way the back doors were, you know, I think in those 24, 48 months, when we were all together, us five. But that's just my perspective on when us five were together. And, you know, when I left the band, you know, I moved to England, that's another story, and did original music, but I really enjoyed my time with these guys. Even now, Mark I've worked with, Bob, like when I was a kid, this guy I've worked with many times. This guy would always inspire me. And Jim, Doors Hotel, Jim, when I was a child, this guy always inspired me. He got me into boxing, Muhammad Ali. I've always loved his songwriting. Jim is a great songwriter. I've always loved his songs. He probably inspired my songwriting to this day. You know, I've always loved Jim's songwriting. So there's a lot of stuff, not only just us playing Doors, but everybody in this band, like Bob really is a guy that knows about swing, big band, jazz music. Zivney really does know about funk and stuff. And this guy, we used to like mock him out. Yeah, Mark, the lounge guy, you know, like, he's like, you know, he's like the guy you see on Saturday Night Live going, hey, you know, I love you, darling. So we could all laugh at Mark behind his back, go, what a jackass. Hey, Mark, how's your Pocono gig doing? But Mark was like, secretly, he really was. Like, as I got older and he was not in the band, I found out that Mark was like a rocket scientist, that he really is cool. He really did. Like Jim would say, what's this U2 stuff? Get this October thing off. The guys drive me nuts. There's too much echo. That's when, and U2 used to play the same clubs as us. We would play a club one night. They were doing the October album, 1981. The back doors would be the next night up there. You know, that club that was the theater up there.
Barrymore's.
Yeah, Barrymore's. So I knew that's why I wanted out, because I wanted to do my own music. And but Mark would always come to see me, and I thought, you know, there's a love of Jim. You know, we would get weird and cold, but every time you see these guys, you could never, ever, ever, ever. Even tonight, I thought, I don't think I want to go. Why are we getting together again? But the second you see everybody, it's like we're brothers, you know, and it's true. And I'm not just saying that.
Yeah.
It's true. I can't sit here and pretend I'm making this crap up.
No,
because this
no,
stuff
I
is
know.
real.
I know.
And without crap, you wouldn't have the crop.
So Mark,
I think the wrap up. You want to wrap up on this?
we can go as long as you like, but the question really tonight was a lot about you, as you are the X Factor who is not local.
Yep.
And I know this band changed your life in many ways, and it led you on a different
Yep.
path.
It did.
Could you tell
So-
us just how your time with these gentlemen
Yeah.
influenced the rest of your life?
And I'll speak for the rest of the people who are in the room, the Malik brothers, Wayne Nichols, Jody Bush, all the people who are here that I have had the utmost pleasure to pursue what I enjoy more in life than anything, which is playing and making music and entertaining people. Jim had a vision. He called me 3 times. The first 2 times I turned him down. The third time I told him I was only coming to play for a little while until he found a keyboard player. And I stumbled into an opportunity to be a part of the vision that Jim had and to experience the talent that these guys have behind me here. These guys are fantastic musicians. All I can say is they played, they served the music, they served the song, they entertained the people that were there. They gave everything they had, and I was just thrilled to be a part of it. They taught me what I needed to know for the rest of the experiences that I've had with the other people in the room. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't tell you how much it means to me in my life to be a part of your life, and every note that we ever played together. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Jody.
I have a special request. Chris, grab the guitar, and you 5 gentlemen, pick a song, the Doors back to a song that we could all sing to.
Oh, jeez. Jimmy, you're on, brother.
I guess Love Me 2 times.
You gentlemen pick
Love
it,
Me
Get it.
2 times?
and we're all going to sing it together,
All right.
like an anthem.
All right, you got Love Me 2 times on that brag box?
Let's do this. We're going to first do a warm up so Jim can meditate. So we'll do this warm up
I'm
first.
doing the low part.
All right, let's right.
Go for it, brother.
Okay, here we go.
Rip it up.
All right, so
Spanish Caravan.
Oh, Spanish
Ooh,
Caravan.
that's a good one. Carry me.
You played this for me the first time, I fucking cried.
caravan take me away.
Field full of grain. I want to see you
Again and again,
take me.
Spanish caravan. Yes, I know you can.
Nicely done. And that was just the warm up.
Okay.
The blues alligator.
Hey, Mark, that sound for your hearing aids right behind you.
Oh,
Hold on, I lost my penis. I mean my pick.
that's another story altogether.
I can't bend anymore. Those days are over. I'm good.
Oh, by
Wait.
the way, special thanks too.
So,
One,
Chris.
Jenny, over here on camera.
Oh, man.
Yep. You need a picture of it? Thank you.
On audio. Joe on floating camera.
Yeah.
And new son, because I'm new dad. What's your name again? Todd!
Maniac Supreme.
And a special guest, Doc Rich Holiday over there, drinking himself under the table.
Great guys to work with. Great guys.
Yes, thank you very
Thank
much.
you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, the back doors.
Okay.
Do you love them badly? Or?
We're going to start off with just a brief poetry thing that Mr. Robert Zibney. Here we go.
This one. Oh, yeah. I want to tell you about Texas
I want to
radio.
tell you about Texas radio
On the big beat.
Yeah.
Comes out of the Virginia swamp, cool, slow, plenty of resistance. With a backbeat narrow and hard to master.
Yeah. Texas radio.
Okay, so that's for Robert. You got to get that out. And as Nat King Cole would say, yeah, chestnuts roasting. Okay, so I like that Nat wrote that song because he lets us all be kids to 92. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, kids from 1 to 92. I got every Nat King Cole record, so if anybody wants to come to my house, you could listen to them all in a row. Take a couple days, but you know.
So don't you love him, Evan?
Okay, is that what we're doing?
That's what we're doing.
Ah, okay. Okay, B flat minor, Mozart, second movement. Oh wait, wrong song. All right, here we go. Hold on, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Hold on, cobwebs, spiders, recluses, stay down in Oklahoma, don't bite me. Here we go.
love her madly? Don't you need her madly? Don't you love her way? Tell me what you say. Don't you love her madly? Wanna be her daddy? Don't you love her baby? Don't you love her as she's walking out the door? Like she did 1,000 times before. Don't you love her ways? Tell me what you say. Don't you love her as she's walking out the door? All your love, all your love, all your love, all the love, all the love is gone. Sing a lonely song of the deep blue sea. 7 horses seem to be on the mark. Don't you love her madly? All the love, all your love, all your love. Yeah, all your love is gone. To sing a lonely song of the deep blue sea. 7 horses seem to be on the march. I can hear it. Don't you love her madly? 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 Yeah. Thank you. Peace out.
Peace out. And you get this. K-Tel presents Jim Hakim's Greatest. Today, Jim Morrison Enterprises suit Jim Hakim. Oh wait, we're just kidding.
Love me 2 times.
Thank you, brother.
Well,